When someone says, "Hey, how are you doing?" What's your normal response? We got a lot of fines. How many of you guys are your fine people? How many of you I'm good. I'm pretty good. All right. How many of you are, what else do we got here? I'm well. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Not even an English teacher. Um, how many of you are, sorry, how many, I'm well. These are the pretentious ones. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Both of you, Sherry and Kyle, you guys need to have a support group, I think. Um, what else? I'm just giving you a hard time. What else? I'm okay. I'm okay. Great. Oh, there we go. There we go. We got some life. Steve is great. Anyone else great? Oh, wow. Like one of you. Okay. You know what cracks me up sometimes, and it's not like in a laughing out way. I think it's fact if they're understanding the word biblically, and maybe you're this sometimes. Maybe you're the I'm blessed person, right? And sometimes like this word blessed in our culture gets pulled out of context and it means different things to different people. Sometimes when someone says, "Oh, well, God's just blessing me," we would attach that to like the physical or the monetary or whatever it might be. But in reality, God does call us to live a life that he defines as blessed. In fact, when we go to the New Testament, Matthew chapter number 5, we have these things called the Beatitudes. And there are 9 of them. I'm sorry, 7 of them. What did I just do? I added a couple. There are 7 of them. And these 7 Beatitudes begin with the word blessed. Blessed are the blank, fill in the trait. And then there's a blessing attached to them. As we come to understand Abram's life here in Genesis chapter 12, one of those words that we saw consistently was we saw the blessing. I will bless you. You will be a blessing. You shall be blessed. We see those words and those phrases here within Genesis chapter 12. But I want to back up just a little bit and understand why God is saying this. And I want us to understand what God is saying, even as He's giving the promise of blessing. Because I think in our culture, sometimes we can misunderstand what it means to be blessed. And so today, as we get into the life of Abram, we're going to see this life of Abram defined by a couple of different things that, if we're being honest, these are probably not the things that we would say, yes, that is a blessed life. Because as we go through the life of Abram, there are going to be two places that are just consistent themes in Abram's life: the tent and the altar. The tent and the altar. How many of you, maybe I shouldn't have people raise their hands, live in a tent? Probably not many. We vacation maybe in a tent. You want to go out into the woods, do some camping, pop up there, and you want to enjoy that. But if someone lives in a tent, and I have known some individuals that battled homelessness and they did not have that place to live for a period of time. And for a moment, they lived in a tent. And we would say, okay, well, that's not ideal, right? Abram spent his life in a tent, and Abram spent his life around altars. And so today I want to get into what some of those things are and why Abram, in the midst of that, is a man that God looks at and says, hey, you will be blessed. As we meet Abram, we actually meet him a few verses before what we read there in chapter 12. We meet him at the end of chapter number 11. And what we see is he's the son of this man named Terah. Terah is a descendant of Shem. We see from chapter number 11 here at the end of the chapter. So Shem being one of the sons of Noah, and so we see Terah connecting to this man Noah, to the one who had gone through the flood waters. We see that he's the husband of a woman named Sarai. Later, her name would be changed to Sarah. So if you hear me say Abraham or Sarah, I apologize. That's how they're known through most of the Bible. But before God changes their names, we meet Abram and Sarai. He was from a place called Ur. Ur was to the southeast of most of Mesopotamia, those regions where the rivers would meet. And here they were from this area, and yet God calls them out of that area, and they moved to a place called Haran. And they moved to this place. There, his father settles, and eventually his father passes away. And it's there in this place of Haran that God calls Abram. And as he calls Abram, we see this call in verse number 12. And I want you to remember as we get into this call that Abram, in the midst of all of this, it's revealed to us that he is 75 years old. So he's a young man, right? I don't know why you guys are laughing. He's a young man, right? Yeah. Gary gets it. Yeah. Young guy. 75 years old. Most of the time, I know a number of 75-plus-year-olds. I know we have people in the room that, hey, that's where we are. And when we think of the idea of packing up and moving, understand this, you're not hiring a truck. You're not paying someone else to move for you. You are lugging things around and you are walking or you are riding in a caravan or does that sound appealing to anyone, much less anyone of Abram's age? No, no. And yet what happens in verse number 1 of chapter 12? God comes to Abram and what does he say? Go from your country and from your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. Wait a minute. In all reality, this thing that God is telling him to do, I don't know about you, but to me, that doesn't sound appealing. To me, when he says, get up, go away from, what does he list? He says, from your country. This word country here, it means your place, the land that you know, the familiarity of it. Go away from it. Then he says, go away from your kindred. This is your family. I want you to leave. His father was in this area. This is where they had resettled to. And his father lived there. And he's going to walk away from him. And we understand when God places this call, if you want to do the math on all the timelines, his father's still living at the time that he was called away. We see later that he would live for about another 70 years, his father would, after this call of God, 60, 70 years. But instead, here, God comes and he says, go from the place, go from your family, and go from your father's house. And this phrase, father's house, this is speaking of not just the family, but the place where he was known, the place where he had a reputation, the place where his family had done business. Oh, you're Terah's son, Abram, it's good to see you. And he says, go to this place that you have seen, that you've heard about. What does he say? God says, go to a place that I will show you. Abram hasn't even seen it yet. And yet he says, go. And I want you to understand that Abram is one of these beautiful pictures of faith within the Bible. We see it not just here, we're going to see it revealed later multiple times. We see Abram as a man of great faith. And I want you to understand what faith is in the middle of all of this. Faith is not knowing where God is leading. It's trusting the one who leads. You catch that? Faith is not knowing this is where God is leading. It's saying, I know and I trust the one who leads. Let's explain the difference. Let's understand the difference. Does Abram know the route, the path, the place that God is going to send him to? Can he show him a photo book of Canaan in this land and say, here it is, isn't this beautiful? Check out the view right here from these mountains. Isn't that incredible? Look at this coastline and turn the pages of this land. Is that how God is able to work in Abram's life? And Abram just goes, wow, that place looks amazing. I'm in. No. Abram had never seen this place. He had never laid his eyes on it in any real way. But what happens, we understand, is that God revealed himself to him and he said, go. And what does Abram do? He goes. He went. Why does he go? Because he trusts the one who is calling him. Understand, in your life, there will be times, there'll be places, there'll be situations where you look and you say, this is intimidating. This is straight up frightening. I don't like this at all. But understand with me that if God is calling you in those places, you're not following the situation. You're not following the job or the home or the location. You're following the God who has called you to it. And so when God calls us, faith is not understanding and knowing exactly where he's leading and how the pieces will all fit together, but it's understanding that he is good in the midst of that leading and that he will never fail you. So then we understand, we come to verse number 2. God calls Abram from his country, from his kindred, from his father's house. But I want you to see what he says in verse number 2, because he's not done yet. He's not done yet. He says this, I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and in him who dishonors you, I will curse. And you, all the families of the earth, shall be blessed. And so understand what God is doing here. Even as God is calling Abram away from a place, from his family, from the place where he is known and has a reputation, what does God promise? In verse 1, he promises a land, doesn't he? He says, go from the country that you're in now and go to the land that I'm going to show you. He promises offspring in verse number 2. One of the things we understand about Abram is that 75 years old, he has no children. Any 75-year-olds that are expecting soon. I told one person this morning, the last 3 Sundays, I've had different women tell me that they are expecting. Okay? So be prepared for some announcements coming soon from a few people. 3 in a row. I was just like, what in the world? Every week. I'm surprised every time. The fact is, Kyle, do we need to ask you to leave today? Security? Just kidding. Every week, right? And so if next week, if a 75-year-old shows up and says, hey, Pastor Nate, I need to tell you something, I'm really going to be stunned. The first 3 have been surprises. That one would be shocking. Shocking, right? Like, hey, excuse me, that's not how things work, right? And yet, what do we have? We have this man who has no children. He and his wife, Sarah, have no children, no descendants, nothing to speak of. And yet God comes to them and says, leave the family that you do have. I'll give you a family. Leave the place that you know. I'll give you a place. Leave the place where you are known, and I'm going to make you known. You see this? When God is calling Abram away from all these things, he's saying, I'm not leaving you here. I'm not leading you here to die. I'm not leading you here to fall off the face of the earth. I'm leading you here to bless you. But that means we have to understand what that word blessing is. And in fact, as God promises these things, it's actually many commentaries and scholars will break these down into a 7-fold promise to Abraham or Abram. And these 7-fold blessings, if you look at verse 2, what do we see over and over again? When he says, I'm going to make of you a great nation, he's saying, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to make your name great, that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. That word blessed is like pretty vital to our understanding here, right? Because track with me. If we misunderstand the blessings of these verses, we're going to misunderstand these verses. Is that understandable? Everyone follows me? If we're going to misunderstand what he means by the blessing, we're going to misunderstand what God is saying to Abram. It's easy for us to look, and we look at Abram's life, and we say, well, Abram, he was a pretty wealthy individual. So sure, God blessed him. Can I tell you this? Abram was a wealthy individual before he left Haran. He wasn't the only, that wasn't all there was. Abram, yes, was a man that had some resources, but that's not the blessing. You hear me? Because here's what a blessing is. Blessing is not God giving us everything we want. It's God giving us himself. Blessing is not God giving us everything we want. It's God giving us himself. Here's what's happening in Abram's life. As God comes to Abram, you know what he's saying? He's saying, Abram, I'm going to provide for you these things. I'm going to do these things through you. But you know what God is saying to Abram? He's saying, Abram, this is where I am going to be working in your life. If you want to be with me and you want to follow the things I'm doing in your life, this is where you need to be. You see, God is not just calling Abram to go to a place and saying, here, this is where I'm going to pour out finances and resources and children and these things that your heart longs for. No, Abram's heart, the more we get to know Abram, the more we get to understand this. Abram's heart was not for things. Abram's heart was for God. You catch that? It's not for the stuff. It wasn't for the wealth and the possessions. In fact, there are multiple times where we see Abram throwing resources and wealth to others. We see him going, hey, here is this. God has been good to me. Here is this. I am following God, therefore I am behaving this way. Even leading up to a story that we're going to see in a few weeks, where his son of promise finally has been given. The son that he has waited decades for. And he's going to take him and he's going to offer him as a sacrifice before God. So what does Abram view as the blessing? Is it the child? Is it the provision? Is it the place? No, it's God himself. And here, when he says he's going to make a blessing of Abram, you understand where this promise is fulfilled. You have to understand that this promise is not kept just merely in a place or merely in a people, but it comes in the culmination of Jesus Christ. And as Jesus Christ came into this world, whose family did he step into? Abram's family. Whose offspring was he a part of? Abram's offspring. He stepped into this world through Abram and through his family. And we understand that that's where blessing is, because if blessing is having God and knowing him, who is Jesus? What does Matthew chapter 1 tell us? He is Emmanuel, who is God with us. And so as we understand Abram's life and the blessing of Abram's life, yes, God did provide in some incredible material ways, but that's not what the purpose of blessing is. And you may go your entire life and be trying to figure out how to pay bills and being discerning and wise and having to be very cautious with your finances. That doesn't mean that you're not living a blessed life. It doesn't mean that you're not living a blessed life. And can I say the inverse is also true? You may never have to think about money again. You may not be living a blessed life. Because if you have everything that this world offers, and yet you do it without Christ, what does it profit a man if he should gain the whole world, lose his own soul? What good is that? If he shall have everything that this world can offer, and then at the end of it, he be separated from God for eternity in hell. What benefit is there? And so this blessing of Abraham goes so much deeper than the things that we see. These are the promises that he would fulfill, and this is God saying, I'm with you, and I'm going to work my plan out through you, and he does. And it's incredible. But it's not about the stuff. It's about the pursuit of God. This is why when you come to the book of Matthew and Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, we can say, I can embrace being poor and poured out in spirit. You know what else he says? He says, blessed are those who mourn. That's a fun one, right? In what world is someone happy because they're mourning? Well, when we mourn, and when we're broken over our own sin, and when we're broken because we are insufficient and incomplete, and we cast ourselves on God, you know what the rest of that verse says? You will be comforted. And so we have to understand that the blessing of God is not the material. It's not him giving us everything we want. It's God giving us himself. And I want you to continue with me in chapter 12. Verse 4, Abram went as the Lord had told him. Lot went with him. This is his nephew. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to a place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At the time, the Canaanites were in the land. And I want you to pause here for a moment, because I want you to understand what's playing out here. So they've left from the city that he had known, the city that he and his family had migrated to from his hometown of Ur. He leaves his father Terah there. He leaves his family there. And as he does so, he goes down to this land that is today what we would call Israel, or in Exodus and later they call this the Promised Land, the land of promise. This is the land of Canaan, meaning it's the place where Canaan's descendants had come. Canaan's descendants, if you go back actually a couple chapters to chapter number 9, there's this interesting story of Ham and how he disregards and dishonors his father Noah. And Noah then comes and he calls this curse on Canaan in verse number 25. And if being blessed is to be in proximity to God and be favored by God and God giving us himself, to be cursed is what? God withdrawing himself from. And so here what we see is cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. But blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. Let Canaan be his servant. And we see that Ham, through his unrighteousness, what does he do? He does what any bad dad would do, and he passes that unrighteousness onto his kids. And these descendants of Canaan now are descendants of Ham, those ones who are far from God. And we see this very clearly within Shechem, this place that Abram goes first in the land. Because as he comes into the land of Canaan, Abram knows this is a place that has been inhabited by people far from God, who want nothing to do with the one true God. And he comes to this place, the Oak of Morah, or that word Morah means teachers. And so this could be called, and it's called elsewhere, the teacher's oak. In fact, later in Judges chapter 9, it's called the diviner's oak. And this is a place that's known for one thing: idolatry. Throughout the books of Genesis to Deuteronomy and even into Joshua and Judges, this place is just marked by severe idolatry. Over and over and over again, the people of Canaan, the place of Shechem, specifically this tree in Shechem, is a place where there were altars and there were places of worship built contrary to the true God. This is a place that is just marked by idolatry. And so what happens here? What takes place here? In verse 7, the Lord appeared to Abram. So where is God appearing to Abram first? In this place of Shechem. This place known for idolatry, known for wickedness, known for being far from God. Yet in the middle of it, God shows himself to Abram. And here he says, to your offspring, I will give this land. Now remember, as Abram is here, does Abram possess the land? No. Does Abram have offspring? Also no. But God says this is going to be where it is. This is going to be the place. And I don't think it's by mistake that he's doing it in a place that is just rampant with idolatry and wickedness. And this is where he puts Abram. And what does Abram do in response to this? I think this is incredible. The very first thing Abram does here in this land, when God says, okay, hey, push pause for a second, we're here. What does Abram do? So he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. In the middle of this place of idolatry, Abram builds up a place of worship. Isn't that incredible? In the middle of these other gods, in the middle of these false gods, this pantheon, this idolatry, he says, in this place, we're going to worship God. In this place, we're going to pursue him. Because worship is not escaping a wicked world. This is a mistake a lot of Christians make. Worship is not escaping a wicked world. It's declaring that God reigns in it. There are a lot of temptations for us as Christians to run away, to go isolate ourselves, to hide, to say, there's so much evil in the world, so much wickedness in the world. People want to worship every direction, and it's understandable. But I want us to see Abram here as he goes into this place of wickedness. God didn't call him to stay in Haran and just build this isolation and just hunker down. And no, he calls him to a place that is filled with darkness, where there is at this point no known light, right? Abram doesn't come into this place knowing who he's going to be syncing up with and knowing the people that are going to worship the true God with him. He's bringing them with him, what few there are, right? He has not established himself. He's traveling. He's in the midst of. He's in a tent. He's a wanderer. And yet when God brings him to this place, he says, Abram, stop for a minute. Look around you. Take it in. This is the land I'm going to give to you and your offspring. And in response, Abram says, all right, God, here's where the work begins. And he erects this altar. What we're going to find is that every time God comes to him and God begins to speak to him, Abram, that's his response. He says, all right, time to build an altar. Time to sacrifice to God. Time to remember these things. Time to begin the worship of the true God in this place. And you see, God has not called you to run from wickedness. He has called you to pierce the darkness. He has not called you to escape and run from a wicked world. If that were the case, the moment that we put our faith in Jesus and ask him to save us from our sins, wouldn't he just, take us out, right? All right, oh yeah, they believed in Jesus. Here, you're with me. Is that what happens, though? That's not how the world works. We're still here, aren't we? Why? Because our job is not to escape the wickedness. It's to declare that God reigns in the middle of it. Because did you know that your God is not afraid of the darkness? Your God is not afraid of the wickedness of the world. He doesn't cower in fear. He doesn't run from a fight. He doesn't hide out. He is not disturbed by these things. He is disturbed morally by these things, but he's not afraid of them. In fact, what does the Psalm say? David writes and he says, even the darkness isn't dark to you. It has no power over him. And so in the midst of it, we find that Abram is worshiping the true God. And so he's not going to bow to the idols of the land. But can I tell you, the idols of the land still want to call out to us, don't they? Because we live in this place of wickedness, we're often tempted by the idols of the land, the things that our culture elevates and says, these things are worth worshiping. And these idols are so tempting and so strong because they're right in front of our face day after day after day. And there's a pull to these things. But can I remind you, these idols don't save. These idols, they do not build up with their own hands. They're crafted by men. They're crafted by culture. They're crafted by us. They're not something that is able to save us. If we cannot save ourselves, why would something that we have created be able to save us? And so Abram is called to this place of wickedness and this place of idolatry. And in the middle of it, he's given this task. Let everyone around know that I am God and I reign and I'm in control. And that's what our job is here today. As followers of Jesus, we have a message that the world needs to hear. We have a message that must be declared into the darkness. And so we don't run from the darkness, we preach Jesus to the darkness. We tell them that there is a God who loves them enough that he sent his son to save them from their sin. That even though they are far from God and they are unbelieving and they are in their sin, that Jesus died for that sin. And if they will believe in Jesus and call on his name, he will save them. And God has demonstrated the truth of all of this by raising Jesus from the dead and guaranteeing us eternal life. That's the message the world needs. That's the message the world needs. And Abram was a vehicle in his day to take that message, even before Jesus' name was known, just to preach the God of Israel. And he erects this altar here in the land. And I want you to see just in the last couple verses here, these themes for Abram's life. Verse number 8, we see God doesn't allow him to settle there in Shechem. He's not going to stay put. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent. With Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, there he built an altar. Once again, what does he do? He built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going toward the Negeb. So we see what? We see over and over again, we see, where does Abram settle? Nowhere. Nowhere. We see he goes from Haran to Shechem to this land between Bethel and Ai and further on toward the Negev. We see him continuing to move. Even at the end of this chapter, we see him going down to Egypt because there's a famine in the land. We see Abram, he's marked by what? What do we see in verse number 8? As he moves to Bethel, what does he do? He pitches a tent. Why? Because Abram's a wanderer. Abram, he never outgrows the tent. He never goes past this pilgrim's life. He understood that he was a pilgrim. And yet God is going to build God's kingdom through Abram and his family. But why does God use Abram? I believe it has to do a lot with the fact that God knew who would get the glory when he was done with him. That God knew that Abram was content to dwell in the tent and to construct the altar. Because even as Abram goes to the east, this is Bethel, that word means the house of God, the house of Bethel, the house where God lives. And here, what does he do? He builds an altar again. So this morning, I want you to understand that home is not where we plant our tents. It's not the place that we set up camp. It's where God fulfills his promise. It's where God fulfills his promise. Abram was going from location to location to location. Why? Because God called him. Because God promised that he would be with him. And so for us, it's easy to get comfortable within this world, isn't it? Most of us, as we leave this place today, we're going to maybe go to lunch or something like that. But before the day's over, we're going to go home, the place where we're comfortable, where we lay our head. And maybe you've been in that home for a few months. Maybe you've been at home for a few decades. But it's at home. And it can be easy for us to take that feeling of comfort and to believe that this world is our home, where we see the people we know, we go to the places we're familiar with, we drive the streets that we know how to take all the detours. We do the stuff, don't we? And it's easy for our hearts to begin to believe that this is home. But this is a lesson we need to take from Abram. This is not your home. This is not your home. You don't belong here. I mean, you do for now, but not forever. This is a temporary place in between. Even the bodies that we have, the clothes that we have, what are they? What is our life? It's even a vapor. It appears for a moment and then it vanishes away. You see, we are so finite and so temporary that we are not made to be permanent in this life. This life is a temporary dwelling place. And you know what a tent makes? A great temporary dwelling place. But it's not permanent. It's not forever. But even as we dwell in this world as sojourners, as pilgrims, as wanderers, as those passing through, we ought to be reminded over and over and over again that there is a better home that God is preparing for us. And what does that do for us when we understand we have that perspective? It does a few things for us. First of all, it helps us to hold the things of this life loosely. It helps us to understand that the priorities of this life are not God's priorities. So often, church, it can be easy for us as human beings or as a church or as whatever entity or organization to look at the physical, material things and get so enamored by them that we lose sight of what God is doing. This is why people all divide over every opportunity, because we make this place our home. We make this place our home. And we look for ways to see how someone else is changing our home or our place of dwelling. We look to the world around us and say, look at all these things that are going on, and we get afraid and fearful. Why? Because we made this world our home. And it's not. It's not. It's a temporary dwelling place, while God is preparing for us a better home, in a better place, in a better country that one day we will see with our eyes. But even today, we walk by faith, knowing that someday, if we have believed in Jesus, we will see that better home. We will see that better place. And when we arrive on that shore, when we make that pilgrimage and that journey, we will no longer be sojourners and wanderers. We will be settled, eternal, permanent, in that place that is no longer filled with wickedness, but is a place of worship continually, because God has completed the work that he has set about doing. But what does that mean for us today? It means today that we are still in a place where God has planted us for the time he has planted us in. That means today he has placed you beside neighbors, beside family members, beside co-workers, beside the kids who leave their toys in your lawn or whatever. He's put you in contact with these human beings made in the image of God who need to understand what true worship is. And he's put you in their lives to shine the light of Jesus to them. Let's pray together this morning.